So I still remember the day about 18 years ago. I was at university in southwest London, in Twickenham, and I was about 21 at the time. I'm 38 now, and I was walking across a park towards a tennis court to play some tennis, and it was as though something in my mind had broken. It's like a fracturing of my mind, in that thoughts were coming into my mind that were robbing me of peace. There were images in my mind that were disturbing, and I knew intuitively that it was because of the way I'd been living as a Christian man, things that I'd been allowing myself to watch, listen to, conversations, compromise in the area of drinking with the lads, whatever it was. And so it was almost like God had brought me to this place of getting my attention in the area of my mind. And one of the thoughts that I remember specifically having at the time was that I would rather have had a broken leg. I would rather have had 2 broken legs than be struggling with the mental pain that I was feeling at that time. And that's the reality of mental health problems. And so I relate specifically in my testimony as a Christian man of God to the area of what I would call as quite extreme anxiety. University students across the board are in this intense phase of formation and growth at university. They're away from home, they're learning about things for the first time. And I think specifically for Christian men and women, young Christian adults at university, the university years are kind of like just a real crucible for that whole refinement process. And so I can really testify to the Lord meeting me in those years at that time, and specifically in the Word of God in the book of Isaiah. And so what has become for me a life verse is this verse in Isaiah 26:3 that says, "For you will keep in perfect peace him whose mind is steadfast, because he trusts in you." He will keep in perfect peace him whose mind is steadfast, because he trusts in you. And so I came to this radical point in my Christian journey as a man of God, 21, 22, I'd walked with Jesus for years. I was saved under the age of 10, so this is like 12, 13, 14 years into salvation. And yet I was coming to this brand new point, I believe under his hand, where I was having to trust him minute by minute, second by second, hourly, daily, for this sense of peace in my mind. The Bothy Sessions really, I think, 18 years roughly later, have come about because of that testimony. I've always had this sense of wanting to communicate about mental health, particularly again for Christians in that kind of intense pressure of sanctification, what we would say sanctification. And I guess in one sense, because more recently this whole area of mental health has become much more openly discussed in the secular world. People are talking about it left, right and centre, that actually I felt drawn to this book by Johann Hari, as I've talked about in other pieces, as being an amazing opening to talk about this in the spiritual context. Johann Hari's book is amazing, and I'd encourage everybody to read it, particularly those who have taken antidepressants or whatever. I've never taken medications, but I have wondered on occasion if I needed to. So the Johann Hari book is amazing, but it doesn't go far enough. It doesn't talk about mental health in the context of human beings as spiritual beings. It doesn't discuss that whole element of life, the spiritual world, our spiritual makeup, our eternal makeup. And so that's why the Bothy Sessions have come in. We saw the book, that kind of sparked this idea. And what you're going to see next week and for the next 2 weeks, the 3 pieces, are our very best effort to try and unpack this testimony of mental health and the unique strains on the Christian in that respect. And then I think at the end there comes this very, very hard-hitting wilderness message for the church at large. So that verse, Isaiah 26:3, became for me at that point the medication I needed. It was the prescription of sanity to my mind, that for you will keep in perfect peace him whose mind is steadfast, because he trusts in you. And so for me, it was God began to lead me through that verse and kind of massage that into my felt experience and my testimony. And to try and explain that for anybody today who's listening and who's struggling with their mental health, is that there's 3 parts to the verse. For you will keep in perfect peace, number 1. Him whose mind is steadfast, number 2. Because he trusts in him, is number 3. So it's like a reverse chain. God keeps us in perfect peace, and that's his promise to us and to me back 18 years ago, is that he will keep in perfect peace him whose mind is steadfast, because he trusts in you. And so the experience for me was knowing that God was showing me that if I can trust him with every single second and every single minute of the day in terms of my thought life, in terms of my anxiety or anything relating to mental health, in that sense it was the most intimate part of who I am. That's why it was easier for me to think, I would rather just have 2 broken legs, because you can still get on with life. You put your head down on the pillow at night, and it's a deeper, more intimate place, the whole area of the mind. And so if you're struggling, anybody that's struggled with anxiety or depression or anything relating to that realm of the mind knows it's like the innermost being of who we are. It's like David talks about in Psalm 51, is that he desires truth in the innermost being. He desires to teach us wisdom in that innermost being. So that's what it is, in a sense, this whole dividing line between spirit and mind. And so Johann Hari's book is awesome, but it doesn't deal with that. It denies that we're spiritual beings. And so that's really where the Bothy Sessions comes in. So it's going to be an epic project. I really believe that God's going to use it and bless people and help. And this is the thing, our testimony is somebody else's sanity. When I testify, or you testify, about the way that God has led us through these difficult kind of dark valleys, it then becomes somebody else's sanity, because we've testified to God working in our lives. So it's a good thing to remember that your testimony, our testimony, becomes somebody else's sanity.